Thanks for checking out the Locked On NFL podcast on YouTube. Great daily content coming your way all offseason long. Also on Locked On Cowboys, where our next guest, he's the co-host, Landon McCool, joins us. And, interesting reports coming out of Big D that Amari Cooper could be on his way out. Likely is the report from Adam Schefter. That's the way he phrased it. Break down the reason, Landon, why Amari Cooper and the Dallas Cowboys are likely headed for divorce.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to get a book out because there's like so many different chapters and angles in this. I think you have to start with the contract, right? I mean, the Cowboys are due to pay Amari, I think, someone in the area of $21 million next season, and cutting him, I think, before June 1st would reduce that number down to $6 million. That's not really the reason. That is the crux of the situation, though. And if that money wasn't the case, then and honestly, even if the deal was structured differently. Maybe structured more like Zeke's deal, where it would be a little bit more difficult to get out, I don't think that we would even be having this conversation. But the point is that the Cowboys are in a tight cap situation, probably not due to the Cooper contract itself, but due to several other contracts. And because of that, Cooper's contract is imminently move onable, if that's a phrase, I guess. It's a situation where he's due this money. It's guaranteed by, I think, exactly 2 weeks from today. And the Cowboys are in a spot where teams know that he's due that money. It makes kind of trading him or making him a tradable piece kind of difficult. And the Cowboys are currently, I think, $22 million over the cap as it stands right now. So they have to do something to kind of make some of that room. The question is, do they want to keep Cooper and kind of flip the trigger on like 6 or 7 other contracts, thereby extending their life and kind of having to do this whole rigmarole down the road with somebody else? Or do they want to kind of cut their losses here and try to get out of this contract to try to, save up some money, and eventually next year they'll probably do the same thing for Zeke, with the idea that by 2023 suddenly they'll be, flush with cash, or at least in NFL terms.
Does Dak's new contract play a role in this? As far as their kind of cap strung?
I mean, yeah, of course, like
Yeah.
in the sense that he's by far the highest paid player on their roster. I think it certainly does. I think that, the difference there is that Dak is definitely one of those contracts that, there's like a whole section. All the contracts with the Cowboys all have, the switches in them. All of them can be flipped so that they can be extended out, push out guarantee money, pay the credit card later, basically.
Right.
And Dax is the only one that they are gonna light up like a Christmas tree. They have no problem flipping all the switches with him and guaranteeing all the money there. I think the difference, even though Dax is obviously the highest paid, he's the one that they have the least problem kind of pushing that money on the back end of. And they're being a lot more judicious with some of these other contracts, like maybe Tyron Smith or Zach Martin or some of these other folks, that they're like, do we want to do this? Do we want to push more money and guarantee more years? It can make things a little bit hairy down the road for them.
It's strange to think about that this was such a strength for the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of seasons. I mean, most importantly, this past season, where you have the wide receiver core, and it can look dramatically different. CeeDee Lamb, really the only main receiver that will be under contract potentially by the start of free agency. Cedric Wilson, potential free agent. What do you envision as far as how this team's going to approach that position this offseason?
Yeah, if Cooper goes, then it's going to be an interesting kind of shuffle to see exactly how things work out. Right now, we are hearing rumors that Gallup is very much being approached by the Cowboys, and they're discussing numbers, but it sounds like they may be pretty far off from each other as far as what they're expecting and what the expectations of a Gallup contract would look like. I think Cedric Wilson is going to end up getting maybe more money than they're comfortable paying, though I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way, if Gallup doesn't work out, for them to kind of go a little bit more in on Wilson, because I know they like Wilson. They feel like he can do a lot of things. He certainly can be a good third receiver for you if that's what you need. I have to think that the draft is a big thing here, and part of the reason it sounds like that the Cowboys are kind of interested in this, and maybe more than other reasons, is that they felt like, despite the money, that the production wasn't quite where it needed to be, and maybe even the effort wasn't quite where it needed to be for Cooper at the end of the season. So I think at this point now, they may be looking to kind of just blow up the situation a little bit, try to kind of reload the wide receiver spot, in hopes that if they can move off some of that money on Cooper's deal, maybe they can re-sign Gallup and they can, franchise tag someone like Dalton Schultz, and then also hopefully pay other people like Randy Gregory, who's also up and they really, really would like to retain.
Does it sting Cowboys fans a little bit more just the fact that they traded a first for Amari Cooper?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
the big contract extension that they were able to work out last offseason, but now it seems to be the demise of Amari Cooper. How do we kind of break down, his tenure in Dallas?
It's an interesting look. I mean, the Cowboys before they brought him in were kind of in a situation where they didn't have a number one wide receiver, and they were trying to do a kind of wide receiver by committee situation with, frankly, Gallup as their best receiver as a rookie coming in on a third round pick. And clearly that didn't work for them, and the trade was a direct result of that kind of failure in the wide receiver room, and knowing that they needed something on top. Smash cut to where we are currently, and they have drafted CeeDee Lamb, who fell into their lap. Amari Cooper had an incredible first year with the Cowboys, had a pretty good last year without Dak on the field. And then this year, from pure numbers wise, was just kind of a little bit disappointing. I understand he missed some time with injury,
Mhm.
but I think that the Cowboys should not be making excuses for their $21 million receiver,
Mhm.
and whether that's because the Cowboys offense can't provide for a number one receiver because they want to spread the ball around, or because of something that Cooper has done on the field. It honestly doesn't matter at this point. Like you're just not going to get the value you want out of a $21 million receiver if you're going to spread the ball around like this, or if he's not going to perform up to that level. I mean, he basically had the same number of targets last season as Dalton Schultz.
Mm.
And go look at the numbers. Dalton Schultz produced at a higher level than he did, and even at
Wow.
a yards perception level. So that's not great.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot more digestible if you're not paying him 3 times the salary of all the rest of your wide receivers combined.
Right. Yeah. And people somehow last week just figure out the age of Amari Cooper, which I thought was
Yeah.
we knew where ballpark, but people are like, oh my God, he's only 27 years old in the prime of his career, same age as Calvin Ridley, where a lot of people would think that his the other former Bama wide receiver is a little bit younger, but I'm sure he'll be in high demand if the Cowboys do pull the trigger on this move. All right, last question for our guest here, Landon McCool. Of course, you want to check out Locked On Cowboys on a daily basis for great offseason content with him and Marcus Mosher breaking things down. Any headline making moves outside of this do you envision from the Cowboys between now and maybe free agency or before the draft?
They just haven't been in the headline making moves business,
Mhm.
lately. I mean, they what they do is they try to fill gaps in free agency kind of cheaply, and then sign their own. I would imagine if Cooper goes, they're gonna, like I said, make real strong pushes to try to retain all three of Gallup, Schultz, and Randy Gregory. We'll see if that actually happens. I would imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if they were participants in the guard free agent market. Maybe they try to head that off instead of having to go into the draft knowing that they needed to draft a starting offensive guard because they lost Connor Williams this offseason. So I would imagine that they're going to kind of nibble around the edges. They'll get some middling to low end starters to kind of at least make sure that they are in a solid spot going into the draft, because ultimately what they like to do at the end of the day is draft cleanly. They don't want to have to go in with a bunch of heavy needs. So I would look for the positions where the Cowboys have obvious holes, and then look at the top guys, and then maybe scan down a couple of ranks to kind of see where maybe the Cowboys would be interested in buying.